Well, good evening, sisters and brothers. Brother William with your belated Sunday sermon. It's a bit late today because preps for Operation Santa Claus are well underway, you know. I'm lucky enough to live in a largely secular country. Now that's to say that we pay lip service to our religious traditions, but we base our major decisions on a lot more than the currently popular interpretation of desert dwelling Abrahamism. There's many excellent reasons for this, and one of the best is that Britain is a small, densely populated island. We're packed with people from a range of vast and diverse backgrounds. The fondest held views of some of these people would be absolutely abhorrent to their neighbours. So we maintain a policy of attempting to treat everybody equally under our laws. And there's been many laws that were passed specifically to try and make bigotry illegal. And naturally, these well-meaning statutes are the ones that the bigots make the greatest use of. Hate speech laws, drafted to curb the excesses that are probably inevitable over highly charged issues like race and religion, are constantly being employed by religious and political extremists. I think it's natural enough, you know, when you get a fair-minded body trying to be egalitarian, the extremists are going to take a piss. But even abusing our existing laws isn't enough for some people. Now, if you're not aware of what I'm talking about, then Google's your friend. Check up on what I'm saying. It comes from the fact that many financial transactions in the West traditionally have been made on an ad hoc basis according to traditional methods. So Indian or Italian community leaders, for instance, might extend interest-free loans to their family members, or there are more elaborate transactions that you might find amongst European Jewish communities. Now this is fair enough, as long as it's understood that these arrangements are ad hoc and they're subservient to the laws and customs of the country they're being practiced in. The precedent is being used as an excuse to justify Sharia courts in a number of Western countries, with Britain right at the front of the charge. Now, there's a huge difference between tolerating an informal, familial or cultural tradition and actually usurping the law and the custom of the land. In the UK, Sharia courts are dealing with divorce, finance and a host of other matters that we already have court systems to deal with. Now, it's justified by a host of prior arrangements that were written around completely different transactions. You don't get to challenge this. If you challenge it, you're an Islamophobe. It's so accepted now that these Sharia courts can make pronouncements and judgments that petitions have been mounted to moderate their extremes. I'll run that by you again. There are petitions being mounted to moderate the extreme behaviour of a series of courts that are operating outside of British law. Seriously? When the leader of England's state-sanctioned religion, the Church of England, the religion upon which our monarchy's legitimacy rests, expresses the opinion that we should just bend over and take what's coming, accept the inevitable for the greater good, you know we're in trouble. There's a couple of links below to the next phase in this campaign. You see, there are moves afoot to create Islamic Sharia states within the UK's borders. Now you might well ask what I've got against that. I mean, after all, I'm always at pains to remind you that I'm absolutely in favour of everybody practising their own religion and living their life according to their own beliefs. Well, the thing is, that only goes as far as when it doesn't affect the rest of the population. Sharia states don't tend to be particularly tolerant of other religions, even other Muslim religions. Take a look at the links below for a wee look at Pakistan's religious laws and some of the troubles they've got over there. See, these laws, like many of the ones that are being twisted completely out of shape here, were originally enacted for completely different purposes. However, just like here, they're being warped and remade into a newer, hardline version. The Ahmadi are now forbidden to call themselves or behave as Muslims. They're forbidden to preach their faith, they're forbidden to use Islamic terms for their places of worship and their religious rituals. There's another link below. It's just a Q&A session, but it clarifies this from an Ahmadi perspective. There's absolutely no doubt in their mind that they are practicing Muslims. Now, let's be quite clear about this. I couldn't care less about the distinction. I struggle to see any major difference between any Abrahamic religion. However, right now, my next door neighbour is free to practice any faith he chooses, as long as he doesn't try and stop me practicing mine. Now, I like that. Pakistan doesn't have the harshest religious laws in the world by a long chalk. Pakistani courts are, at least above the magistrate level, well known to be fair and balanced, with a reasonable level of access for everyone in the population. This isn't a corrupt system by any reasonable measure, but it's enforcing legislation designed to impose Islamic beliefs on the general population. Now, that legislation is open to abuse, but much more worryingly, the fact is that the law is perceived by the general public to be bigoted against non-Muslims, and that encourages some extraordinary excesses. Roughly 40 people are believed to have been murdered by angry vigilantes for religious crimes since 1990. Can you imagine living in a climate where it's considered acceptable to burn a man to death for damaging a book? Now, that kind of climate isn't restricted to Muslims by any stretch of the imagination. Every major religion seems to suffer this kind of bigotry, but you've got to defend against it. And the best defence is a legal system set up in opposition to it, not in support of it, and having a media backing that up by speaking out constantly against it. Now, we know this works. It's been centuries since we burned any Covenanters around here. Allowing the expansion, hell, even allowing the continued existence of religious courts that operate outside the scope of the laws and the customs of your own country is courting disaster. Here in Britain, the best we could hope for is a miserable, bigoted religious dictatorship in the areas that these kangaroo courts are allowed to hold sway in. But at worst, we could see another sectarian bloodbath. God knows I've had enough of those. There's nothing the British like more than a good old religious war. Now, here endeth the sermon, sisters and brothers. This isn't an anti-Muslim rant, but it is an attack on Sharia courts, particularly British Sharia courts, and religious intolerance in general. I'm sick and tired of Islam getting a free pass on this. Can you just imagine Jesuit courts ruling on Christian affairs in South London? Or calls by young British Catholics for the return of the Inquisition in Christian communities? Why are we so blind to exactly the same thing happening in Muslim countries and Muslim communities here in the West? I don't want you to read too much into the links. Pakistan is a wonderful country. That's one reason why I chose it. It has got its problems, but so is everywhere else. Anyway, later people.